think they've got to engage with the reality of the problem rather than defending the regulator.
There needs to be a bit more to unlock the kind of delivery that is needed to kind of solve the housing crisis.
The event was fantastic, the mood was great, and then you come back home, and on the Sunday after it, Keir Starmer leads with house builders, get your act together. You know, such bad timing. I think it really, for me, took the gloss off UKREiiF. Angela Rayner was there.
I think it's very easy to blame different people and say it's their fault. Hi Ollie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. This is an episode about UKREiiF.
Yep.
We've just got back, but obviously by the time this goes out, it's going to be 3 weeks since the event. And after we got back from Mipim, we did a sort of comparison between Mipim and UKREiiF. And I think it's worth doing that again because I think UKREiiF's kind of upped its game this year. There's some new things to talk about. So first of all, what do you think the kind of the vibe was?
I thought the vibe was really good, actually. I mean, it's helped by sunshine, but actually...
You base your conference, whether you like a conference or not, on the weather.
I know, I'm pretty fickle. So this year it was raining in Mipim, so I didn't enjoy it as much. And,
and it was sunny in Leeds.
So unusually sunny in Leeds, so that was pretty good.
Yeah, somebody needs to do a property conference in like Tenerife where it's guaranteed sunshine. You'll love it.
Well, the British Council officers, they do it in Milan, don't they? So, that's the sort of cheating idea.
Next year.
But no, look, honestly,
what was the mood like?
I thought the mood was really good. I think everyone was out and hungry to kind of make stuff happen. Be it, we heard a talk about the Bakerloo line extension. They were pushing to get that. We heard from various leaders of councils talk about things they want to happen. Loads of consultants and people all out there kind of doing their thing and talking about different things. So I think for me this year, I really noticed just like the whole of the UK construction industry and real estate seemed to be there.
Yeah,
you couldn't move for knowing different people and stuff. And what I've noticed over the past few years at Mipim, as maybe it's got more expensive, and the local authorities are really not going there in the same numbers, that it's becoming a bit of a kind of exclusive event. Whereas actually, UKREiiF is becoming more inclusive. The kind of range of people that are there. So there's probably more ratio of women, more diversity, different types of people there, and crucially, the kind of local authorities and decision makers are there, heads of planning, leaders of councils, all sorts of different people. So that makes it a super interesting place to be.
Definitely. And I mean, it's from the moment you get on the train on the way from London, that train carriage was full of people from the property industry. You get to the station, you bump into everyone that you know. It's more concentrated than Mipim because, so numbers, there's 16,000 people go to UKREiiF and 20,000 people go to Cannes for Mipim. But obviously for the UK, that 16,000 people, they're all focus on the UK construction sector. It's all of the people that we generally work with and, thousands of others, but all working in the UK. Whereas the 20,000 people that go to Cannes, they're all working in different countries. So you get this much more density. And also, I suppose Leeds and Cannes are probably similar sizes, but it definitely feels like a very heavy concentration of property in the centre of Leeds.
There's all sorts of stuff going on at Mipim. It's a really amazing place, but you've got kind of, the Saudis doing NEOM and all sorts of different kind of investment stuff. So global investment and stuff is quite interesting, but it actually, quite a lot of it's not relevant to most UK.
And you're not going to get that the ecosystem that you get once you get the senior officers and the leaders of the council, which is what, they can justify going to Leeds for a property event, but it's much harder, I think, these days to justify going to Cannes. So because they're there, you can then interact with them and you get this sort of whole ecosystem that's UK specific. And I mean, for me, the thing that I took away was the local authorities are all saying we're open for business. So it's interesting. All of the local authorities, from the top to the bottom to the leaders, from the senior officers, everyone's saying we're open for business. We want to make stuff happen. And then, you have to reflect on what the reality is on the ground, and some of this stuff is outside of the control of local leaders, but some of it arguably isn't. So is the planning system that the local authorities have control over optimized for delivery? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But then also is the central policy context framework correct to deliver the 1.5 million homes that the government say they want? I think the most frustrating thing about UKREiiF, the event was fantastic, the mood was great, and then you come back home, and on the Sunday after it, Keir Starmer leads with house builders, get your act together, you need to deliver these homes, and you're the ones that need to be penalised if you don't deliver them. It was so, such bad timing. I think it really, for me, took the gloss off UKREiiF. Angela Rayner was there, that's great. For 2 days later, her and Keir Starmer to come out and start blaming house builders for the crises of the industry is experiencing. Like, it's not just their fault. There's a lot of people that have worked together to make the delivery of homes not happen. Some of them are Putin. It's not necessarily all house builders that have created this.
I think every government looks to point the finger, don't they? Gove used to do it, and he just said it's only the developers' fault, sort of cladding, and there's a whole complicated ecosystem of problems there. The new government, or relatively new government, is really trying to push to build more houses, but on the other hand, they want someone to blame. And I feel very much at the moment we've got a government that's got its foot on the accelerator and at the brake at the same time. And what you get is a slight stuttering, and there's a lot of will there. So I do think a bit more clarity of thinking. I think while there's a positive atmosphere, I don't think I met a single person at that conference. Maybe some of the politicians would disagree with me, but are we really on target for that 1.5 million homes?
No, and there was hardly anybody there that didn't recognise that there's loads of challenges in the industry with viability. Now, is that house builders' fault necessarily? Not, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But the other one, the big one, is the Building Safety Act. Nobody was there saying, without changing that, we're going to be delivering 1.5 million homes. That needs definitely to be looked at to try and get more applications through. And I think until that happens, it's going to be very challenging.
I think so. I mean, there are some sort of dribbling over the line, but I think trying to create, the cultural change that was suggested for the Building Safety Act is something that can be admired and is necessary in some levels, but some of the complexity and bureaucracy that came with it is really causing a blockage, in my view, to moving things forward. So it's trying how to unlock that. It's not clear yet how to do that, but the government can't just pretend that's not happening and that the viability issues are not there and that we're suddenly going to magically deliver all these new homes. So I think on a key policy plank for them, they've got to kind of actually do something a little bit more radical, I think.
I think they've got to engage with the reality of the problem rather than defending the regulator, which is what they've done so far. And again, blaming the industry for the poor quality applications. That's apparently the reason that nothing's going through the gateways. Just tell us what we need to put in them and it'll be way easier.
Yeah, I think it's always a mixture of things, isn't it, with these things? And that actually, I think it's very easy to blame different people and say it's their fault. I mean, even the government doesn't have control of everything, but I think they've got to put the incentives there. And I think the focus currently is on regulation and disincentives to some extent. Yes, the MPPF is good, but I think there needs to be a bit more to unlock the kind of delivery that is needed to kind of solve the housing crisis.
I mean, talking about disincentivization, I actually read I think it's a draft white paper on the proposed changes. So this is one of the proposals is that if you trade a site, so you get planning and then you sell it, you'll be penalised, financial penalties. So, I mean, I can sort of understand what the government's trying to do. It's, trying to just focus on delivery rather than trying to add value at every stage. But that's the reality of the property industry is things trade hands lots and lots of times. You can't penalise each person if they aren't able to deliver it or aren't the right person to deliver it, because you're just going to stop people from investing.
I don't think it's got any legs at all. I don't think they'll be able to get that through. There's so many variables about the value of a site, because the value is determined at that moment on its kind of perceived worth. And now the cost of building, the cost of interest rates, the demand in the market, all of those fluctuate over time. So it could be in a matter of 6 months the value jumps up and down.
Yeah, this white paper doesn't really take into account that at all. And what they say is, a stalled site will basically be confiscated from a developer. So powers to CPO and confiscate land. But then what are they going to do with it? The hardest thing with a stalled site is to get, particularly if, say, a contractor's gone bust and that's the reason it's stalled, getting somebody else in to finish that off is really hard. And why are local authorities going to be able to? The government is suggesting that local authorities would take control of these sites. But what skill set do they have to be able to finish off half-finished
developments? Let's just say they did have the skill set. They've still got to have a business case. So the problem is, if you've got a stall site, it's normally because, there maybe there's some complicated technical issue, but it's often because of viability. It doesn't stack up. And you need to borrow money from the market, a decent return, say 20, 25% is typical, to deal with all the risks and the ups and the downs. And if you're only making 5% on that site, no investor's going to put their money in it. And no local authority, which has an obligation to its constituents, can do that. So I think to try and force someone to make a loss isn't going to happen. The investors will just withdraw. The developer will just go bust or whatever, because no one's going to go, oh yeah, I'm going to put my money into this even though I'm going to make a loss. It doesn't make sense.
I think, it's a draft, so hopefully some of this gets through to central government, but I thought it was very bad timing for what had been a really, really positive event at UKREiiF. And I think everybody was singing from the same hymn sheet that, yes, there's challenges, but everybody is determined to work together to deliver. And then you get this message from central government saying, oh no, it's your fault that it's not, the delivery's not happening.
That's what could, if they're sending out a message to the ether, like, what I would want to see is, I get it's hard, but it's very easy to blame. Isn't there a way, the message coming out of the conference was, can we collaborate to build more, build better,
absolutely.
Build better. And actually, then the negative message 2 days later is, if you don't build more, we're going to punish you. Whereas I think it should be, we're going to help you build more. Here's some incentives to do it.
It would be cheaper. Confiscating land off people and trying to get other people to finish it off.
Get stuck in the courts. It's not going to work.
It's going to be way more expensive than assisting developers with sites where viability has become an issue. Give them loans. You're the government. You can loan people money. Take it back when they're finished. There's lots of ways that you could proactively help people, or giving a better rate for the for affordable housing. Like, that's another way. You could give better grants, like for affordable housing. You could change the rental that people are allowed to charge. There's lots and lots of levers the government do have that aren't CPOing stalled sites and penalising developers if they're unable to deliver.
I think it's a bit of a red herring, is my feeling, because of the complexity of it, and it's more of a slight panic that they're not quite delivering.
But don't you think it shows a lack of first understanding of property, which is terrifying if you're the people writing policy for the property world, and secondly, lack of engagement? Because how many people did they sound test this on before they wrote the white paper?
Well, the white paper is a tester, isn't it? So it isn't like,
But they should be speaking to the industry when they're writing it.
Look, I couldn't agree more. But I think hopefully they'll listen to this podcast and then
Angela, if you would like to come on and we can quiz you about it, that would be great. So the other thing that we did is we did the podcast at UKREiiF. So we took Urban Forecast on the road. Do you want to talk a bit about some of the interviews that we did? I thought they were really great. Yeah,
it was really good. And I think picking up on the theme of positivity, we spoke to 2 leaders of councils really who were very much like wanting to see a positive growth story. So I
think Open for Business, both of them said that was the
one Labour, message. One Conservative.
Yep.
So you had Councillor Dan Swords, leader of Harlow, talking about his vision for regenerating Harlow town and the kind of the history of the new town there and its kind of reincarnation in its modern mode. Then you had Councillor Claire Holland, a leader of Lambeth, talking about her vision kind of for inclusive and proactive growth in the borough in terms of kind of creative industries and social housing, and trying to get that really moving. So really, 2 sides of the political spectrum, both with a positive message, wanting to do business, wanting to kind of grow things. So I thought that was really good.
Then we had Alice Lester, who's senior officer at Brent, and they've obviously had a very pro-development message for a long, long time. And she's one of the people kind of implementing, I suppose, that political message from the sort of, the officer side. She's always really great, and that was a really lovely conversation with her. And I think the change that's happened in Brent over the last 10, 20 years has been absolutely astounding, and will continue to happen. And then Paul Rickard from Pocket Living, who are a very interesting developer. They've got themselves a little niche, and they provide an affordable product. It's, I suppose, unusual in that it's kind of 1 beds and studio units only, and it's for kind of key workers, and it's an interesting model. And
it's a discounted sort of, that was quite interesting. It's we've been talking quite a lot about different products and how you can make the housing market work. Theirs is a really high quality product. It's 20% below the market rate, I think, but there's always there's a covenant that stays with that property. So if you buy it and then sell it, it still stays below the market rate. So I think really interesting, exciting what they're doing, and they're also looking at kind of rental products because of the problem with rental costs. So I thought that was really interesting. We had, coming back to my point about exclusivity and inclusivity, we had Anna McMillan from Women in Architecture come on, and she was talking about some of her projects, but also about women in architecture and about kind of getting a more diverse kind of community involved.
And I think UKREiiF have made a big effort to be more inclusive. Comparing themselves to Mipim, it's not that hard to be more inclusive than Mipim.
We'll have Mipim complaining in a minute.
God, can't keep them all happy. But there's fewer blue suits in Leeds than there is in Cam for sure. And I know that so Matt Christie, who's been on the podcast before, they make a real effort to try and make panels and also tickets available to a more diverse range than would usually go to property events. And then the panels themselves, to make, you're not allowed to have a man-only panel, so they're trying to be as inclusive as possible, and that, I think it filters down. I think you can really see that they've made a big effort, and should definitely be congratulated.
And age, I would say, if you kind of look, if you filtered across, I mean, I don't know if they probably collect stats, but definitely age, sex, diversity, mixture of kind of backgrounds, and racial diversity is definitely better, I would say, there than kind of from an eye view.
Yeah, and so I think it's probably worth like finishing on it. As it's maybe not the most interesting thing, but in terms of cost, we've worked it out, and we think it's about half the price for two people to go to UKREiiF. So it's about half the cost. It was probably like the tickets start at about $750, go up to about $1,200. So that's already about half the price of a ticket for Mipim, which is about $2,000. And then obviously it's closer, so all the accommodation, the transport is less, the accommodation's similar. It depends where you stay. I suppose the only downside with Leeds is that it hasn't quite got as many hotels as are needed for that few days of the year when the whole property sector goes to Leeds.
That is true, but I guess it's sort of seeing. I thought Leeds is a pretty cool city, and actually I think there's a kind of lot going on there. So yes, it hasn't got enough hotel accommodation, but if we always go somewhere else, there won't be more accommodation, if you like. So I do think it's a city that's actually transforming a bit in a way that Manchester is unrecognisable in the last 20 years.
I know, but so the difference with Leeds to, say, Manchester is that the rest of the year, Leeds doesn't have quite as much demand for tourism. So there's never going to be that many hotel beds because they're not going to build hotel beds for 2 nights a year. Whereas Manchester's got 2 stadiums. I mean, obviously Leeds has got, stadiums, but they're not Man City, Man United. And it's got some arenas, which means that there's constantly more people.
Has to get more conferences.
More conferences,
Get the film festival to move to Leeds. That's what my suggestion is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, okay, that's our advice. So maybe on that note, we should finish.
Okay, yeah. I think, thank you very much, Ollie. That was
Cheers.
great.
Thanks.